educational programs. Their website is seedsed.org. You should go and have a look. Lots of interesting things on there. They award grants for specialized educators and funds and scholarships for children in financial need. So thank you very much to Seeds. I would also like to thank everyone for being here this morning. I think these are always such great, raucous community gatherings. I would like to thank our leaders for being here. I saw Keta from our school board, Keta Brown from our school board. Do we have any more school board members here today? Oh, Bill Landseedel, thank you very much for being here today. We have our superintendent, Shireen Smith. We have our principal of the high school, Dr. Joanne Culverhouse. Just saw some of them parking. We always have a really wonderful turnout of our leaders, and we're so thankful that they come to our coffee break meetings. I hear so many great stories in various meetings every week. Just two that I wanted to share with you. One is that all the schools have been, they have a hunger drive on to make the students more aware of the needs and how many hungry people there are in the world. And everyone's been collecting cans and foods. And I happened to be at the Laguna Pantry when a huge truckload of food from top of the world arrived there. And Andy, who heads up the Laguna Pantry, which is in the community, he had tears in his eyes. He was so thankful, and he said that the food that they had received that day would take them through to March of next year. And it's an incredible number. I was quite bowled over by it, but they said they give free food to, this year it's been about 40,000 people who travel to Laguna, to the food pantry, to get free food. It's a really amazing place. If you've never been there, they're always looking for not only donations, but for people to volunteer to help out. Secondly, this is more grassroots, but after our last Mindset coffee break, I heard of this great group. I didn't make it, but they all watched the TED conference, which was Eduardo Breseño discussing mindset, and they had a meeting and came up with some great ideas. They reviewed all the research, and I saw that they had taken some surveys from Princeton on grit, and they are continuing that. They're going to, January is their next meeting. So I love when those grassroots programs just pop up because it's something that someone's heard or seen. Let's see. We were going to have our Director of Special Education here to talk about some other parent education opportunities in the district. However, she is in a meeting. So you do have some flyers on your tables. You could have a look. There's the Laguna Beach High School Parent Project, and it's a series. They also are starting drop-ins, because sometimes I know it's very difficult for parents to schedule every week to drop into these. Have a look at those.
And can I just, a real short plug?
Yes.
Because I went to the class last year for, I think, 9 out of 10 weeks. It was an excellent, excellent program. Laura Rivas is wonderful. She gave a lot of very useful, actual, practical things that you can do to help change the communication between your team. And this one is geared towards maybe middle school and high school age, parents in middle school and high school age. And I think if you have a middle school or high school age, you know how difficult that time can be. Even with the best of our kids, they begin acting a little bit differently and not speaking so much to us in very short, curt voice, right? So I would highly recommend this. Laura's wonderful. It was really, really helpful. And it's free.
Thank you, Joanne. That's always nice to hear. A couple of things before we have our lovely part of the program. I know that some of you were at Harbour Day for Michelle Borber's presentation. Her talk was on how to raise successful, self-reliant, less stressed kids. It was wonderful, and I took 5 of the top tips. 1, display a positive, hopeful attitude about life. They see so many things on the news about violence and bad things that are going on. There are lots of websites. One was Kids Are Heroes website. Make them realize how fun it is to be an adult, so they know where they're headed. Number 2, cultivate your child's natural areas of competence. That's one of my loves. I always think that's a good one. Develop their healthy, authentic self-esteem. 3, grit and perseverance. Grit being the number one indicator of how they're going to be in their future. future life. I thought that was very interesting. And 4, make family time. I know 3 boys, we have practices every single night. It's so difficult to have a family dinner. And their suggestions were great. They were, if you can't have dinner, maybe have a breakfast. If you can't have a breakfast, meet at 8:30 and have 10 minutes of family time, where everyone gets a turn to say what they did or if there was anything on their mind. And I really think that's a good one. All right, planning for next year. We have our questionnaires. Please give us some feedback. We always look at them to see if there's something that you've suggested for next year. Speakers, books, topics. Our next coffee break is January 15th. It's an evening one from 7 to 8:30, and it's going to be in the Artists Theatre at the high school, because this is our last meeting here until they've done their big refurbishment. So we will be meeting there. Scott Burnett, who's actually here. Where are those glasses, Scott? I want to see them. There he is. He's got his fancy Google glasses on. He's testing them out for us. And he's speaking on managing technology in the home and cyber safety for parents. So that should be great. Right. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Richard and Linda Iyer. For nearly 20 years, they've been among the most prominent speakers on topics of parenting, life balance, family strengthening. They have 9 children who have helped formulate their books and speeches, I can imagine, and about 23 grandchildren, which I know you're going to have books coming, up-and-coming books in the future. Their audiences range from the Young Presidents Association to major corporations and associations to schools, churches, and community groups. And they have found that in every one of the 45 countries where they've presented, parents have similar hopes, dreams, and worries about their children, regardless, I thought this was very interesting, of economic, religious, geographic, or cultural differences. Their book, The Entitlement Trap, is outside for sale, and they will be signing it afterwards. And please join me. It's my great pleasure to welcome the Ayers.
Thank you so much, Cindy. This is such a pleasure to be with you all. I feel like we've come home in a way, because last March I brought all of we had 4 daughters and 4 daughters-in-law, and we came here for our conference. We get together once a year, and we call it the Mothers and Future Mothers of Ayr Realm. And we covered Laguna Beach. We went to the beaches, we went to your wonderful restaurants, we went up and down this highway so many times, and we had a ball. So this is wonderful, and the weather is so beautiful. We have sent children to the East Coast for schools. Richard went to the Harvard Business School, so we just kept sending him back to Boston for 16 years. And then we came out here and thought, what were we thinking?
Why didn't we know about Pepperdine earlier?
Everything. We finally have a son at
SC.
SC.
SC! And we're going to send another one to UCLA. All right, now we're good.
It's okay.
By the way, our first act of benevolence is here's 2 extra chairs. You guys that are standing, come right up here. You hit the jackpot. The speaker's chairs. So there he comes. He's coming. And he's another guy. I mean, we're thorns among the roses. There's just a few of us here. And one of the other guys is Scott. Thank you, Scott. Scott proved his mettle. We couldn't get the Apple to connect with the projector, but Scott, as the technology speaker, whipped it right into shape. So I encourage all of you to come in January to hear what he has to say.
We're glad he came this morning. I see so many great parents out there. We want to start out with the fact that we know
How do you know they're great parents?
I know.
You can tell by looking at them?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And especially, it's just the hardest job in the world to be a parent, isn't it? It's just the hardest job, and especially moms. And I see so many moms out there, and I have to tell you about a young mother that came up to me recently.
She only tells this when there's a huge majority of women. Otherwise, she could not get away with what she
No, this mom said, you have to hear what my 9-year-old said to me today. She said, listen, Mom, how hard is it to be a mom? And she said, oh, my wheels just started turning. Like, how can I explain how hard this is? Like, maybe 12 out of 10. I don't know what to say. And before I could say anything, she said, Mom, sometimes is it just so hard that you wish you were a dad? I know that. I mean, it's wonderful. We live in an age where the dads are there, and they sometimes, and they do wonderful things and so on and so on, but it is really hard to be a mom. So, with that as a start.
Well, let's get to know you guys just a titch. We've got till 10:15, right? Is that right, Cindy?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to find out how many of you have preschoolers, first of all. I don't think too many. Maybe a few, well, more than I thought.
Quite a few, yeah.
How many with elementary age? Wow, there's the epicenter. Junior high and teenagers. Why'd you guys come? It's too late for all of you. No, they had younger ones too, that's why they came.
No, how many of you have them all ages? I mean, really, it really is. We have loved having these children. We always say we have 9 children, one of every kind. Because really, we have such a variety of kinds. Just to get the questions out of the way, there are 5 sons, 4 daughters, all ours genetically, and no twins, just so that you know.
Well, you should know that we've been writing parenting books for 25 years, and we just keep needing new material. And boy, oh boy, did we get it.
We got it.
In fact, if the last 2, Charity and Eli, who you're going to meet in a minute, if they had been the first 2, that would have been it. But God, in His wisdom, saved those 2 until we had 7. Although, frankly, have you ever had one that really you learned so much on him that it made it easier on the next one? It just confuses you, doesn't it? Because you think you're learning something, and then the new one comes along. Nothing is the same. Every time that's happened with us, 9 times. So, when we get to Q&A, whatever you ask, we will say, "Oh yeah, we had that with." So we'll just go ahead.
We do want to just talk about entitlement this morning because we all live in an entitlement age. No matter what, I mean, whether we have this affluent audience that we're looking at now, or we have a friend who went to work in the slums in Atlanta, and this little young girl that she'd been working with a bunch of young women, one of them looked at her shoes and said, "Oh, I love your shoes. Will you give me your shoes?" You know, because they think they deserve everything because they don't have anything. And she said, "I worked hard for these shoes." "No, you can't have my shoes." So no matter what, no matter where we are, it really is the same all over the world. So we're going to launch.
Let's launch a little bit. Now, we did discover how to tell. It's a simple 1 qualification test to find out if you're an experienced parent, okay? And it is, in a minor crisis, do you grab the kid or do you grab the camera like that?
That is not a first
You think
child.
that's a first child? That's probably like number 5. And the mom's probably like, "Oh, honey, give me the camera. Look, he's kissing the kid." So, but the point is, we do relax a little as we have a couple of kids, don't we? It's not as stressful as with the first one. So we want you all to relax today because the kids aren't here. And as we think on our kids now, they'll seem very cute and wonderful, and we can just have a good time. We run, as we speak to affluent parents, which is a lot of what we do lately. In fact, we just came from Buenos Aires yesterday, where we were meeting with a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization. They're basically the people that run Argentina. And
They were from all over the world, but you know, it wasn't. I mean, if you're familiar with EO or YPO, yes.
A lot of any YPOers in there. We speak a lot to YPO, and the more affluent the situation is, as Linda points out, the entitlement problem runs all through all stratas, but it just sort of changes levels. Like we were in Monaco speaking to a group, and honestly, I heard these 2 little 7-year-old boys arguing with each other, whose dad had the best jet. And it was like, "You only have one of those little Lears? Those things are creepy. We have a Gulfstream 5, you know," and they were having this. And so it's the same argument you hear, only maybe it's a car or maybe it's something else, just depending. But the problem, the endemic of this sort of feeling of I'm entitled really goes to everything. But what I was going to say is, we run into sort of 3 models that we've named among parents who seem to be doing well and who are usually type A and who usually have a lot going on in their lives. One is the general contractor model, which is sort of like, I'm the general contractor. I have the electrician and the plumber and the framer, and these are the people who actually do the work. I just make sure they do their work. So I'm the general parent, and I've got the teacher and the coach and the music person and so on. And I just sort of get the kids where they need to go, and it all works out. It doesn't all work out. You cannot delegate parenting. That's number one, okay? The second model is the problem-solving model. We run into a lot of high-powered people who, in their business, they're very proactive. I have my mission statement, I have my pro forma, I have my list of goals for the year and so on. Oh, how are you doing with your parenting? Oh, fine. Well, do you have any goals there? Goals? No, I just hope that it seems to be going well, and if there's a problem, I'll go buy a book or something and I'll figure out how to deal with it. So, extremely proactive people being enormously reactive when it comes to the kids, which is a formula for disaster. And then the third one, a proactive strategy, and that's what we want to try to give you today. It'll be a little too specific for some of you, but we find it's better to throw out a lot of stuff and have you, as the discerning person, the only one who really knows your children, sort of pick and choose what you think will work. And it's fine if you say, sorry, that won't, oh, this one might, oh, no, this one might. And so we're going to give you quite a few things to sort of choose from today, right, Linda?
Right, as we know that you have children of all different levels in the schools, and so hopefully you'll just choose what works for you.
So in an affluent, how do you raise kids to be responsible? Oh, one more thing, what we talked about earlier. 3 of our boys a few years ago, none of them are the same. This one in the middle, Talmadge, was a pleaser. I don't know if any of you were lucky enough to have a pleaser. We got one. Here was my discipline method for him. Watch my right eyebrow. That was almost too harsh. Talmadge would say, "You're right, Dad, I can do better. I will." It's awesome, you know, it's awesome. How do you think that would work on Eli down there? Eli, can you see that face? That's how Eli looked till he was like 8 years old. And honestly, when he was 6, his favorite phrase, where he learned it, I don't know. I never know where they learn any of these things. He said, "You want a piece of me?" How do you think this worked on Eli? He'd hit me right there. You would think that was an indication, a target. I mean, so the point, and I can't even begin to tell you about Noah. Other than he practiced that angelic grin because he knew he could get away with murder. So they're all so different, aren't they? You all know that. Now, let us try a little survey on you. You're a little far away. What is the single biggest problem facing kids today? What distracts them most from their ability to be happy? What contributes most to underperformance? What is responsible for the lack of motivation? What drives parents and teachers crazy? Now, you're only going to get to choose from 6, and you can only choose 1. Those are all pretty big problems to be deciding where you're going to cast your vote. Peer pressure is a big problem. Substance abuse, entitlement, sibling rivalry, pornography and sexual experimentation, excessive technology. We just added that one on for you, Scott, just a minute ago. Okay, you can only vote once. How many vote peer pressure? Biggest problem. A few. How many vote substance abuse? You're a lucky group. How many vote entitlement? How many would have you voted for that even if you didn't know that was our subject? How many say pornography and sexual sibling rivalry, sorry. Sibling rivalry? Okay. Pornography, sexual experimentation? Here we go, Scott, ready? Excessive technology? Okay, my quick count is about 50% of you said entitlement, about another 30% of you said excessive technology, and guess what? They're really the same thing. So 80% of you are essentially saying, our kids, well, you say it for me, what is a kid today, what's his attitude? Is it sort of, okay, I'm a kid, and what's the next word you've used? Want, okay, there's even a better one that starts with a D. Yeah. I deserve or demand pretty much everything, and I want to have it now. And I do not want to have to wait or work. All the W words. I don't like those W words. I like the E words. And every one of them says that. Now, what if you happen to be an extremely responsible parent who doesn't give him anything, makes him work, teaches him all these things? Then for you, entitlement's not a problem, right? Why is it still a problem for you? Because all their friends are entitled, and they're not with you all the time. And the parent who thinks he can isolate his kids and have his own little culture separate from the peer culture, give me a break, right? So somehow we've got to find a way, Linda. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with that?
Well, we want to show you just a few little examples from the book.
Oh, you could give me better
And
ones
we're not
than
going to
these.
read all these, but I mean, just, I got home from my trip and my 7-year-old quietly brought up something he obviously planned quite carefully. Mom, you've been gone a long time and you missed my band concert. How about buying me the new weekend to make up for it? Have you ever heard that? I mean, it really happens.
These got sent in, by the way. We did this survey online. By the way, you were typical. Your results were pretty close to these. And then we just happened to throw out, if you've got any entitlement stories you want to send us, we'd love to receive them. Our server nearly went down. I mean, literally, we were bombarded, and some of them were funny, and some of them, but funny in kind of a
Sad way.
it's sort of dark humor, isn't it? It's like this next one, the 9-year-old. I have to have a credit card or a cell phone, at least one of them. Well, the last one, I was shopping with my 4-year-old who saw something he really wanted. He got upset when I said no and angrily asked me why I wouldn't buy it for him. My response was because I don't want to spend the money on that. He frowned, growled at me and said, fine, then just give me the money and I'll buy it. You get these kids. Now, so let me ask you this. And Linda's the one that brought me around to this. I didn't get this for a while. I mean, my attitude was sort of, they are entitled, okay? They're my kids. I want them to be entitled. I want to give them pretty much everything. Isn't that my prerogative? Why should I worry so much if they've got a little entitlement attitude? Is that going to kill them? What's the problem? You tell me, what's the problem with an entitlement attitude?
Lack of work ethic.
No, see, already we're getting to the point. It's not the entitlement, it's what the entitlement attitude takes away from them. So work, motivation, initiative, I heard.
Accountability.
Accountability. Think even a little deeper.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. I love gratitude. Does a kid who's entitled feel gratitude? No. About time you gave me that, Mom. I deserved it forever. You know? So all the things we wish they had is like entitlement, just like a vacuum, and just sucks them away. That's scary, isn't it? So what? I think you mentioned all the ones that Linda had on the slide. Oh, the last one. I mean, who knows what that is? Do you know any kids that know about delayed gratification? It's a foreign concept. Okay, well, we don't want to dwell on the problem too long, but boy, there's nothing, this is pretty ominous to say, but really nothing destroys like entitlement. We've said that, and the motivation's not there. A loss of initiative, higher and higher expectations. That's the other thing, it does escalate. You know, it's not something you satisfy their entitlement. Okay, finally I'll give you this, and then I don't want to hear from you again until tomorrow when they want the next thing. And it's almost like you fed their habit.
Let me just throw in a story here, because we were just having dinner night before last with a table of young men from Saudi. And it was so interesting because one of these guys said, I have a younger brother who's 21 who we just keep, and it was so funny because he asked me for my Twitter account or something, and I tried to spell entitlement, and he said, "What is that word? I don't get that." And I spelled it over and over. I don't get it. I don't
better
get
word
it.
for it than Saudi.
And he said,
Something bigger.
no, but then he said that we have this 21-year-old younger brother that we're just all sick about. We just send him to school in Canada, and he just lays there and doesn't do anything. He gets horrible grades. He's on drugs. And then we send him to Ireland, and the same thing happened, and he just has no motivation. And I said, honey, that is what we're talking about. That's what entitlement is. This kid has been entitled to the hilt. We'll give you anything, just go do it, and no work, no ethic for, I've got to do this myself. So it really is a huge problem.
Here's a case in point. I hope this works in your group. How many of you had some kind of a job growing up? Some kind of a job. You babysat, it's every hand as near as I can tell. How many of your kids do now? A few, bless your hearts. Is it a little hard to get them a job that you can live with today, or is it still easy and we're just slackers as parents?
It's hard.
Is it quite a bit different than it was when you were? I mean, I could go mow a lawn. I had a paper route, for crying out loud. I mean, these are things that don't exist anymore.
But our kids are so busy, right? We have them in so many lessons, so many things. There is just no time to stop and have a job. So,
how many of you kind of wish they could have a job, but you can't think how?
How do we do that? Yeah. So we're going to hopefully give you some solutions.
So when we got working on this, we knew we were onto something because everyone. See, our parents didn't use this word. I mean, entitlement was some government program or something. Now it's become a parenting word just in the last 10 or 12 years because we've all recognized it. And in a modern society, we give our kids license too early. A lot of you let your kids do stuff they're not really ready for. Let's be honest, license. But responsibility too late. Isn't that a funny paradox? On one hand, we go too far this way, on the other hand, we go way too far the other way. Let's blame someone for it. Where does this entitlement come from? Who's the culprit? Come on, and don't say yourself, because we're looking for a scapegoat here. Who does this to our kids and to us? It's advertising, I knew it. That advertising makes them want stuff all the time, doesn't it?
Celebrity culture.
Celebrity culture. Oh, I blame those people. They live right around here and I blame them. Yes, you're right. What else? Who else can we? Huh?
Disney Channel.
Even Walt Disney. He's evil. Oh, he's evil. Evil Walt. I know one. No one's mentioned it yet. It's awesome.
Wait.
No, I told you not to blame yourself yet.
My husband.
Did you say parents? Huh?
Grandparents.
Yes. Oh, they're the worst, aren't they, those grandparents? How about government? I mean, everything we have is an entitlement program, right? That must be it. Oh, banks. Wait a second. Banks. Credit card companies, right? Oh, they're the culprits. They give our kids credit. If you had kids go away to college, what's waiting for them in their little mailbox when they get to college? Pre-approved credit card. Quite a high limit because they know who you are. Okay, so we're all just laughing, wishing it were true, but we know it's the bottom one. We are to blame. We really are, and we have to face it. Now here's a quick one. Linda, you take us through this one, because remember we did this with a really big group.
Well, we just asked them, what do you want your kids to have? What are the things you want to have? And if, we had time, we could go through and we get the same answers from you.
Like if you had a little magic wand and you could just say, I give you self-esteem or whatever. Those were the top 5 answers. Top 6 answers.
But what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with
that
that
list?
of 6, that wish list?
We can't see them.
Oh, sorry.
That is
Too small. Self-esteem. Here were the top 6 that people said, if I could give my kids self-esteem, self-motivation, initiative, judgment, and happiness.
And we might add grit to that. I
grit.
loved what Cindy said about grit. We
Grit.
have a son at UPenn right now that's studying positive psychology, and Angela Duckworth is the TED person that did the grit talk. It is so big right now, so they just.
What's
didn't know
wrong with that list? You can't give a one of them, you're right. None of them can be, that's why so many start with the word self. They are developed from within, and all we can do as parents is give kids an environment where they have at least a chance to develop those things. And instead, and again, we're going to get off the negative here because I'm starting to feel real guilty already. We give them instead indulgence, entitlement, and license. What we should give them, and now we're really feeling guilty, we should give them responsibility. So why don't we just do this? Son or daughter, I give you responsibility. Now, you need to get motivated and start taking care of your own things. Nothing happens. Let me just ask you flat out, is responsibility an easy thing to give? It's a terribly hard thing to give. How many of you run businesses or have employees? It's hard. Why is it hard to give responsibility? There's a couple of really overwhelming reasons, aren't there?
Control.
Why? Tell me.
It's out of your control.
Yeah, you lose control when you give it. But we like control, don't we? And we know we can do it better. Faster. And faster, more efficiently. And so we're not even very good at giving responsibility in an employee situation. We're horrible at giving it to our kids.
But there's a little key word in this for those of you
Oh, yeah.
that can see this. I gave you responsibility, now you need to get motivated and start taking care of your own things. There's one
Can you
little
find one
word
word
that
that's
is
the key to everything?
It's the secret.
I heard,
Care, I heard motivating, and
yeah, who said the O word? Own. Own. Do you realize that responsibility doesn't exist without ownership? Does anyone want to disagree with me on that? I'll ask you one question. How many of you, by show of hands, have ever taken your rental car through the car wash? Awesome! Why did you do that?
We were in France and we had it for 2 weeks, so it was getting so
You just couldn't stand it. Okay. Very few people have ever taken their rental car through the car wash. We had a building by us in Washington, D.C. that was condominiumized. Have you seen that happen? It's happened a lot around here lately. And the same people still continue to live there. Only now they weren't renters anymore. They got to buy their units. You would not believe what happened to that building. In a week, people painted it, people put out window boxes. I mean, what was the difference? They owned it. Such a difference. Do you think it applies to children? Well, let me give you a quick story. Our son comes home one day a few years ago, and we live in Park City, Utah, okay? And this is in March.
where it is snowing right now.
It's snowing today. Hallelujah. And he comes home and he's missing, not his coat, that happens all the time. He's missing one of his shoes. And I just happened to be home and I said, Josh, where's your shoe? He's got this little sopping wet, freezing cold stocking foot. And he's a very conversational boy, and he didn't think that I was mad, I guess, because he just said, become very conversational. Well, Dad, the snow's melting, and there's a ditch, and the water's going, and Chad and I needed a boat, and the shoe. Where is the shoe, Josh? Well, you know where the water goes under the road, and it went in, but it didn't come out. And so now I'm the typical parent. Do you know how much that shoe cost? Well, do you think Josh knows how much the shoe cost? Now, but he does get it now that I'm mad. So here's what he did, and I'll never quite forget this. I see his little face in my mind. Do your kids, when you get mad today, sometimes the feisty ones, the Eli's, that's the little one on the left is Eli. He gets mad at me, and he says, well, it was actually your shoe.
No.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the one that has the wet foot. Well, you bought it, and now you'll probably have to buy me another one. I'm like, control yourself. But then after I got over my urge, I thought, I just learned a huge lesson. And I started walking around the house, And I noticed he didn't own anything. That's why his clothes were on the floor under his bed. That's why his toys were broken, shoved in the back of the closet. All the things that were happening with Josh traced to one single thing. He perceived zero ownership. He'd never worked for any of those things. He'd never picked them out. He'd never taken care of them. He'd never learned anything about them because they were totally disposable. And now I start thinking, could that even go deeper? And I ask myself the question, I wonder if he perceives ownership of his grades in school. I wonder if he perceives ownership of his choices. I wonder if he perceives ownership of his conflict with his brother. I mean, I started finding that ownership had applications every time you turned around. And that very same afternoon, Josh and his sister are fighting, and I come in and I say, "Who did it? Who started it? What did you do? What did you do?" And what am I doing right now? I'm taking ownership of their conflict. I'm going to decide who's to be punished and how severe it is and who is right and who is wrong. I'm the judge, the jury, and the executioner all rolled into one. Isn't that a lovely thing to be, parents? And in the meantime, they have no responsibility and no ownership, see? So this ownership thing, Linda,
Really,
use up the ownership because...
we really,
Go another one.
yeah, there we go.
Ownership.
We wrote a book called Teaching Your Children Responsibility. I mean, we started with Teaching Your Children Joy for the little preschoolers when we had a bunch of preschoolers, and then we went to the elementary age and did Teaching Your Children Responsibility. And it seemed great. I mean, it's like a great idea.
But it was hollow.
But it was
sort of
kind
hollow.
of, we just didn't get it until we finally came around to this as we saw our children grow and perceive what was happening to them. It really is all about ownership. So the book is about ownership. We'll be talking about that now the rest of the time because there's so many things your kids can own that you just haven't thought about. You haven't realized, like an argument or whatever.
Are you getting this, really getting this? Because you might say, well, come on, when they're entitled, we give them things and then they have ownership. You were with me, aren't you? It's not, that's not ownership. Let's put another modifying word, earned ownership. Earned, something they've earned, they now really perceive it is theirs. And we started realizing as we launched on this book that parents all over the world are systematically taking away ownership from their children. Because, and the more type A you are, the more of a control person you are, the more you take away. Because you want it for yourself, whether you admit it or not. And so, and then really expand your, so there, it's the antidote for entitlement and the prerequisite, okay, for responsibility. So, can you expand my list even further? Can you think of anything else? Choices,
anything else?
Conflicts. What else would you love it if they really felt like they were theirs, really theirs? Their dog? How about that? What else? Their goals? Don't you love it on goals, how we are as parents, type A parents? Hey honey, what's your goal for math? You're really good. I think you can get an A, don't you? Write that down. That's your goal. You've got a goal now. So it's behavior, influence, potential, education. Ooh, what about equity in the family? Do your kids perceive themselves as owners within your family? Equity partners? Or are they like little pawns that you move around? Are they like little minions? And do they perceive, oh, mom owns the family, dad, I'm just a little, I don't know.
You will get it if you call them minions, right?
Okay, true.
Despicable me.
So let's start with that one, okay? All we're going to do now for the next hour, we're going to take a little break in a minute so nobody will fall over dead in here because it's so nice that so many of you came. But we're going to just cover different kinds of ownership. And I want you to, do you have any questions about the concept, first of all? Because honestly, we've come to believe that the more ownership you, and it's not, again, we said responsibility is hard to give. You might say, well, is ownership any easier? In a way it is, but the kind of earned ownership we're talking about is a little tricky. But the whole premise here is the more of those kinds of ownership you can give to the younger and younger kids, the better they will develop all these things we want them to have. Even though you might be the only family on the block that's doing it, and you might curse all the other parents who are working against you, and you might just almost die that your grandparents are undoing everything you're doing. And we'll get into that a little too, because they really have to be brought on board a little, or you can work so hard on this and they just come along and slaughter it.
Just throw it at them. Yeah, we know the story.
So number
Okay.
one, though, is equity in your family.
I loved what Cindy said at the first about meeting with your family, having family time. Do any of you have a consistent family meeting with your family? Once a week? Look at this. This is amazing.
That's good. That's a higher percentage than
It
usual.
is.
Is it a weekly meeting, regular?
And what do you
A
do?
lot of people have ad hoc meetings when there's a crisis.
Just shout out, because we can't, usually we run the mic down, but I don't know that we can get through. So what do you do at the meetings?
Go over school grades.
Go over
Okay.
school grades? Okay, what else?
Roses and thorns, good things, bad
Ooh,
things.
Good
I
things,
like
bad
that.
things, good, good. Yes.
Gratitude, we go over what we're grateful for.
What we're grateful for,
Awesome.
that's awesome, yes.
The schedule.
Schedule.
That alone's enough reason to have a meeting.
Yeah.
Some of you have kids with a busier schedule than your own, right? It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
okay.
What did you learn this week?
What
Good.
did you learn this week? Fabulous. All right,
How can you contribute to the family this week?
how can you contribute to the family this week? Wonderful
Yeah.
ideas. Any others? Yes.
Instead of talking about emotions, like how are you feeling, the dynamics of bullying or anything?
Oh, yes, if you have a house full of girls
This is an
especially.
advanced group. This is an advanced group. This
They
is a-
are,
you
this
guys
is
are on it.
amazing, yeah.
We've done a big survey that less than 2% of families in our survey have a regular once-a-week family meeting, and you're like, how many businesses would get along okay without a weekly staff meeting or whatever? I mean, just to sort of pave the way and get everybody on the same page and so on. Well, while you're thinking.
Let me just say that
Let's go
we,
back and just show you one thing here real quick.
And you think I don't have time for a meeting? 10 minutes. If all else fails, a 10-minute meeting. We had kids every single morning before they left. We had a little 10-minute meeting. We read a scripture together. We are church-going people, so we had a little huddle with them before they left the door, a little prayer, and sent them off. I mean, sometimes it's just 10 minutes, and if you have preschoolers, 10 minutes is fine, especially if you have refreshments at the end of the meeting. You gotta remember that.
Oh, refreshments are big. When I said to Eli, that's Eli, down there on your left. Hey, we're gonna have a meeting once a week, Eli. We're gonna have a what? I'm a kid, Dad, I don't have meetings. I mean, you can almost get, and then I said one thing. I said, Eli, we'd like you to conduct the meeting. I'm gonna conduct the meeting? Awesome, Dad. Let's do the agenda. I mean, again, it's ownership. If the kids feel like, oh, Mom's having a meeting to lecture to me and tell me the schedule, but if it's like, I'm in charge of the meeting, I'll now turn a little time over to Mom to cover the schedule. So it's all about getting them. That's what we mean by equity in the family. Sorry.
We have grandchildren now who are conducting meetings, and when we visit, it is just a riot to see them conducting the meeting. I mean, you have to start it out and kind of get the schedule, whatever your schedule is, just the things that came up, and then have them be in charge. There's a little website called familynightmeetings.com, and if you want to go to that, there are just little one-page lessons that you can have as soon as they can learn to read. 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds can easily give that lesson in 5 minutes. It's just about being happy and loving life and loving the earth and, just things that are generic, but good for your kids to, and they don't learn it unless they teach it.
But I'm learning from you guys. I'd rather not call it a lesson. It's better what you said. What have you done this week to help someone else in the
Right.
family? What have you felt? The more participatory your little meeting is, and the more the kids are in charge and conducting, the better it goes. Now again, I'm going to keep reminding you, why are we doing this? Ownership. Once they feel like I am in on the ownership of this family, your job as a parent becomes infinitely easier.
And I have something to say. We have a daughter who actually has her children to say what they did to help somebody. What did you do to help somebody? She actually does it when they come in the door every night at school, after school. It really is, what did you learn? thank you for that. And what have you done to help somebody?
Well, she actually goes even further. She gives an award, and we've run into this with a lot of families. We've become almost like a depository of good family ideas as we go around the world. And not only one of our daughters, but we met this really interesting person in Colombia. And they have in their weekly meeting, at the end of the meeting is the awards. And they have like, I think it was 5 traveling awards, and all they are is little plaques, but the kid who wins gets to put it on his door. And one of them was, in their case, was WWJD, what would Jesus do? It was the kid who could come up with a time during the week when he did something sort of generous or magnanimous or whatever. And one was the SS, the Self-Starter Award, who, you know, and kids would nominate themselves, you know. I placed myself in nomination, but it just gave them a nice little way to wrap up. And then, not to spend too long on that, but the other thing, you would be amazed how many success stories we've seen of, again, who cares what the mission statement is? Doesn't matter what it ends up being, but the process of putting it together is this enormous sense of equity for a kid. Hey, we're going to do a family mission statement. Well, what is that? Well, what are some words you think should describe what our family is? What's wrong with our family right now? They love that one. What could be better about it? And they're saying things and you're writing them down. I mean, a lot of you participated in vision statements in a corporate setting, and the more the employees are drawn in, the more they give to it, then whatever comes out, that's our family. We help do that. What about that family in Canada?
Yeah, do any of you have mission statement? A family mission statement?
Family mission statement, awesome.
See,
2 or
1 or 2
3 of these.
hands, 3, that's
You should all
awesome.
have one of these. This is a small effort, huge reward kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it truly is. We had such a good time with this. Actually, we had teenagers before we thought of it, so don't feel bad if you don't have one. But we went to dinner. We happened to have dear friends named Stephen and Sandra Covey. Many of you know Stephen Covey. Sadly, he passed
Stephen
away last
Covey
year.
was
We
our
miss him so
neighbor.
much. He's a
Miss
neighbor.
him so much.
Also had 9 children. So we had a confab once a year or twice a year sometimes, and just had dinner and got ideas from them. And they said to us one night when our kids were older, like, "What's your family mission statement?" And we went, "Oh, shoot, we just don't have one. We haven't thought of it."
Stephen got after us. He's like, duh, you don't have a family mission statement? Like we were the only family on the planet that didn't have one.
But he suggested we really make it a big deal. Go away for a weekend, rent his facility as cheap of the weekend. You know, get all the kids and tell them, we want a family mission statement. What are we about? What are your favorite words? Start with words that they love and thoughts about how we want to be as a family. And just to make a really long story short, by the end of the weekend, we really did have some fun things that we got from the kids about what we were about as a
But
family.
it was long. It was like
It was
a
long.
whole page.
And I have to say, we did send them away. You know, we'd send them away to go play ping pong for a while, and then go swim for a while, and then come back and talk again. And they were thinking about it by the end, but we also sent them away for an hour to talk about their own mission statement. We said,
Personal ones,
in
yeah.
3 sentences, what do you want for your life? What is your mission for this life? And it was amazing what happened. In fact, we
We
just
still
moved.
got those.
We moved recently, and I ran onto Talmadge, our pleaser, who his mission statement, and obviously he hadn't kept it next to his heart his whole life, because that was in my desk. But honestly, it was an exact description of him. He's now 35. He did it when he was 11. It made a huge difference just to get in his mind, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, and then get it down to 3 sentences. It's just stunning. So it does make a difference.
Pick up on one thing Linda's saying. You don't, some of these ideas, how well they will work for you depends to a shocking degree on how big a deal you make out of it. Like if you just sit down after dinner someday, hey, why don't we hammer out a little mission statement here? But you rent a resort somewhere for a weekend and they're there for the purpose of hammering out this mission statement, and you've got audio, video stuff, and you're writing stuff, you're making it really cool. And then when the thing's done, you don't, it's not just something that goes in a drawer. You'll think I'm making this up, but a guy in Kansas City, they'd done this, and they'd come up with this mission statement, but it wasn't getting much attention. But he, luckily for him, owned a granite company, and he put the mission statement. He had it in how do you want to say?
Etched.
in a big slab of granite, and they put it in the family room. And he said, that's just awesome now. Our kids are just, they show their friends, this is our vision statement, this is what we do. And it made all the difference in the world. So it's all about, I hate to say it's all about props sometimes. The more elaborate your setting is, the more kids get this kind of stuff. And the higher the age will go. You know, like a sultry, like 14-year-old who doesn't like any of your ideas. Oh, we're doing it at the Ritz-Carlton, and we're staying for the weekend, and we're going to have it etched in stone.
That may be going a little too far for some people, but whatever works.
What about that?
We went to Canada. We gave this challenge to a group, and then we went back 6 months later to see how they were doing on the challenges.
Awesome.
And this cute little mother came hugging up to me, and she said, "Do you want to hear our family mission statement straight out of the mouths of a 6- and 8-year-old?" And I said, "Well, of course, let's hear it." And she said, "Okay, this is it. Be thankful, be thankful, and be bananas." Those kids want to make sure their parents knew they were there to have fun. And she said, "We have been to the ice cream store in our pajamas. We have had sleepovers in the backyard. We have had so much fun with that mission statement because everybody's on board. Those kids own it. They thought of it and they own it." So
Ours, by the way, and by the way, the longer this takes, the better. And you might just get a draft. I think ours took 2 years. We're working on it.
Yeah, we got that one
Suggestions
page down to
of
one
family
paragraph,
meeting.
and then we kept saying, "Now what is it?" And
It
we kept
finally
saying,
came out as 3 words: broaden and contribute. And it was the idea of the best education you can, and see the world and broaden, but then give back. You got to always give back. And Eli, true to his character, you got to be careful of this. Eli used that sucker for his own purposes. Like he came, I remember still when he came in one day, he was 16. And, "Dad, me and some of my friends want to go to, we're in Park City, want to go to California for the weekend. Can we take the car?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "It would be extremely broadening." You have to watch them, but they'll get it, and they'll feel equity in the family. Now we got to move because there's a lot of kinds of ownership. Oh, show them ancestors, because part of this equity in the family is knowing where they came from. Some of you figured that out. It's enormously powerful for a kid to know who his grandfather was and where he lived and what he did. In fact, there was a thing in the New York Times by that guy we really like on the family narrative.
Bruce Feiler.
Bruce Feiler.
Those of you who've seen him,
We're
he's
a fan.
fabulous. And he's saying it's so important. It gives your kids so much self-esteem if they know where they've come from. And that they know that their grandparents worked hard.
Not only the
And
good
they gave
stuff.
up a lot.
Not
They
only your
sacrificed a lot. They may have
great-grandpa was
lost
the mayor.
everything and then started over again. They need to know those stories.
Yeah, they need to know the hard points as well. And making marriages a big deal. This is, they should be the big still of your
And
life.
maybe we
Now,
should break for just a minute here.
one more. Let me do this one, then we'll break. So I'm going to go fast.
I knew you'd say that.
Because ownership of things is the first thing that occurs to most people. And there's a real simple system. And you've recently had a program, am I right, on financial management in families. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, other than to make sure you tie it to this ownership thing. Now, since you can't replicate the experience you had growing up with jobs and sort of earning your own money and so on, the next best thing is to create a little sort of I'm going to almost call it a game, but it's a family economy within your own family, where instead of an allowance, think about I don't even like the term. That's a welfare term. I'm going to allow you to have some of my money, basically. We used to do an allowance, and one day I remember banging. I was trying to sleep in. It was a Saturday morning, and they're banging, and I'm a little sleepy. I opened the door, and in my foggy mind, it was like a welfare line. Here's these poor kids. Give us our money. Give us our money. It's allowance day. I'm thinking of just feeding this entitlement. They perceive no connection between performance and reward, and therefore, the things they spend their allowance money on, if there's no conditions or earning to the allowance, they have no more ownership than the money did. It's just a disposable thing. So anyway, we worked with some other families, and now, I don't know, there's thousands now, because we've been doing this for a while, of families who've set up some kind of a family economy.
Well, they just take a
Some
good
of them have
idea and
done
make it
better.
better for themselves.
Yeah.
And so take whatever it was that you learned last time and try to see if you can fit it into this little
But the point is,
thing.
you don't need to live on a farm to teach responsibility. I mean, you don't have to send the kids out to gather eggs and milk cows. If they learn how to earn, how to budget, how to save, and how to give money, money, as it turns out, is not the enemy. Money is a really good raw material with which to teach ownership and responsibility. It's just that we do it all wrong most of the time. So,
Oh, wait,
how
before
about
you go
this?
on, go back to the 1027.
Oh,
We
yeah.
required our kids
A
who
lot of-
earned this money to give 10% away. Just
The
and
first
It's
10%.
never hard to figure out where to give. After the Philippines last week, it's just something like that always. They save 20%. They're required to save 20%, and then they can spend the 70% is disposable to them. But, they made up their own rules too. We had a 50, 40, 10. We had, they decided, but this was the minimum for our kids.
So basic ingredients are, number one, get a big family bank. These are some Canadian folks who had a really good one, we thought. Again, it's props. The bigger the bank, the stronger, the bigger the combination lock on it. If it's something really impressive that looks like a bank, give it a name, the First Intergalactic Bank of Jonesville or something. Think of something wildly expansive. And then the second element is some way for them to keep track of certain things they're supposed to do each day. This family had just 4 little pegs. They should not have to keep track of more than 3 or 4 things, or it'll be confusing. But in this case, you get up in the morning, you're a kid, and you put in that first peg, which means I got myself ready for school. I was out the door on time, I didn't forget anything, and Mom didn't have to remind me, now you can put in your first peg. You come home from school afterwards and you do your homework and your music practice, in this family's case. You can put in the second peg if you do it before dinner. You have to do it anyway. But if you do it late at night with me standing over you, you don't get the peg. See?
Now, sometimes those of you who have teenagers have homework that have to
so
be
you
done after
have to
dinner.
adjust this. The third one, you have a little job somewhere around the house that you do that no one else does. The maid doesn't do it, the cleaning lady doesn't do it, Mom doesn't do it, you have to do it. This is where Eli, anytime you said job or work, you thought he would faint or something, it was so foreign to him. But you can find a way, like he was a little terror of a basketball player, and I got, this was a stroke of, every once in a while I get a good idea, and I said, Eli, what's a zone defense? Oh, a zone defense. Well, that's where you don't guard a person, you have a certain part of the court, Dad, and you don't let anything bad happen there. And I said, that's exactly right. From now on, the front hall of our home is going to be your zone. Don't let anything bad happen there. And he said, oh, it's like a zone defense. And if I do that, I can put my peg in? Yeah, great, I can do that. So sometimes it's the terminology and the props. So that's the third one. And the fourth one, you get in bed on time, and you have everything laid out for the next day, and you're ready to go. And you put the fourth one in. Now, when Saturday comes, and then at the end of the day, on a little slip of paper, on a stack of Post-it notes or index cards, you write a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, depending on how many of your things you remembered to do and did. Okay? And you get it initialed by your mom or your dad, or the tender, if there's a babysitter there or whatever, and it's initialed, then you drop it in the slot in the top of the bank. Then on payday, and I encourage your husbands, most men have a secret desire to be bankers. I don't know why. I love that. I would say on Saturday morning, the bank's open, and they'd all, come in, and then they'd get their little slips out and add them up. Where's mine? Where's mine? Oh, here it is. 3 or 4 or 5. They'd add them up, and how much they would have was exactly how much they got paid. And we made it like payday. Okay, you want your money in cash? There's cash in the bank. They did for the first few weeks. Now they'd rather have a check. You give them a check, a paycheck. They take it, endorse it, and then they can put it in their little checkbook, which they have.
Well,
Checkbooks are old-fashioned, I know, but for a kid with a check register, and they like drawing their own signatures. We had one kid work on his signature for a week. I have to use it on my checks now. But they can really get into it. And how early can you start? How early do you think you could start this? as soon as they can add, basically, as soon as they can write. So we're
Add and
talking about a
subtract.
7-year-old maybe. 6-year-old might be a little too young. You might want to have a date in which they can enter the bank, and prior to that, they're not eligible. If it's their 7th birthday. Maybe you've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they both want to do it. No, the 9, say, it's nice, delayed gratification, right? You're 6, you can do this when you turn 7. Now what's the incentive? Why would a kid want to do this? Well, number one, it's sort of a compliment. You're not really saying this, but to him, I'm old enough to have a checkbook, to have money in the bank pays interest. Do you think a 7-year-old can understand interest? You bet they, oh yeah, they can. They can understand compound interest. They'll tell you what it would be by the end of the year if they leave it in. It's awesome. They can understand the Federal Reserve System. I know this because one time Eli looked in the bank and said, I don't think you got enough money in there. He was essentially saying there could be a run on the bank. And I explained the Federal Reserve System to so this leads to interesting discussions, but the point is, why would they really want to do it? Because there's a lot more autonomy and money in it. Because you say to them, look, you can now join the family bank if you want. You're not going to be forced to. If you want, you can stay on the old allowance system and get your $20 or whatever you get in a week. But if you come on this system, and if you do well, and if you remember, no one's going to remind you. Bankers don't remind people to do their work. You just either do it or you don't. But if you do well, you can get 3 times that much every week. Now they're interested and say, oh, but there's a catch. You'll now buy all your own stuff. Don't come asking me for things. I'll just say, do you have your checkbook? What's your balance look like? And you can buy it.
As you can see, he's really adamant about this. He's really loves this, and sometimes it takes 45 minutes to get through this, and there are details in the book. If you are interested,
We're going to give you all the
there's so
details.
many details in this. But it does change the ownership. It just turns the ownership.
Can I just say one more thing, Linda? Your home can be a safer, more forgiving microcosm of the real world, and thus prepare young children to live in it and not be part of it. And so we're going to take some questions on this as we stand in just one second, but one final thought. What starts as a game in your family, a little economic game, you can earn, you can give, and by the way, don't forget what I said about the interest. The part they put in the bank that gains interest grows rather rapidly. We've seen families that pay as high, you don't want to know their address so you can make a deposit, 10% per quarter. Why would a parent do that? Because they want it to grow, because they have a little small print that says the money in that part of the bank that's earning that exorbitant interest is earmarked for a percentage of your college. Now think about that for a minute. Ownership of, I had a letter just the other day from a guy, took his son to, sorry honey, this is really quick. Took his son, I'm so excited about this, took his son to the registrar's office as an 18-year-old freshman, and they had agreed, because they'd had this system now for about 8 years, they had agreed that this boy would pay 50% of his first year tuition, and then the dad and mom would pay the rest, because they wanted to get this ownership. And he said, I watched my son write out a check for $7,000. And he said, as he was putting those zeros, his little hand was just shaking. He looked up at me and he said, Dad, that is a lot of money. And Dad said, I said to him, what do you see when I have to write out? But the point is, then he got the payoff, because the boy said, excuse the reality, this was the exact language, Dad, I'm going to work my butt off. What would you give to hear an incoming freshman say that? Why? Because he realized it's a lot of money. Because it was his money that he had earned. Sorry.
That's all right. I do think we better, if they want to break, right?
Yeah, well,
So
we're not going to go
maybe-
anywhere. I'm going to do the silent scream with them. It's just a brief break.
Oh, I think
We're not letting anyone get out of
here.
here. If you want to go out, you can, but everyone will notice you. Stand up with me for a minute.